The billionaire's daughter lay still on the marble floor, her golden curls spread across the cold stone like fallen sunlight. Beside her, the maid knelt, hands trembling, clutching something small, black, and alive. "Maria, what have you done?" the butler gasped, his voice breaking. The heavy doors burst open. Mr. Adrien Vallon, the man whose name could move markets, froze at the sight before him. His daughter's eyes flooded, her lips pale, and the maid was crying beside her. "What did you do to my child?" he shouted. Maria's voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't hurt her. I swear I was only trying to help." Adrien's voice thundered. "Help? You touched her." But before another word could leave his mouth, a soft sound broke through the silence. "Dad!" Everyone stopped breathing. Because for 10 long years, his daughter Sophia had never spoken a single word, not one. Welcome to our channel. If you don't support lies and manipulation, please like, comment, and subscribe. The people who don't are usually liars and manipulators. The Vallon mansion was a palace of gold and glass, a monument to wealth, discipline, and perfection. Every surface gleamed like mirrors, every step echoed softly against marble floors. But inside those walls lived a silence so deep, it almost had a sound of its own. That silence belonged to one person, Sophia Vallon, the only daughter of billionaire businessman Adrien Vallon, one of the most powerful men in the country. Sophia had been born deaf. From the moment she came into the world, she had never heard her father's voice, never laughed at a sound, never cried at a whisper. Her entire world existed in quiet, a world her father had spent a decade trying to break. He had built hospitals, funded research labs, flown across oceans, and paid the best specialists in the world. But every time, the answer was the same. "She will never hear, Mr. Vallon." To outsiders, Adrien was the definition of success, composed, controlled, and commanding. But behind the doors of that mansion, he was a man haunted by guilt. A man who couldn't accept that all his money, all his power, couldn't buy the one thing he wanted most, his daughter's laughter. So the house became a temple of silence. No loud voices. No music. No laughter. Even the staff moved like shadows, speaking in whispers as though afraid to offend the air itself. And though every chandelier sparkled, every wall shimmered, the mansion carried a kind of emptiness, the kind that no luxury could hide. When Maria Alvarez arrived, no one in the mansion paid much attention to her. She was just another maid, young, quiet, a little shy, with a face that spoke more of struggle than of luck. She had come seeking work after her mother's illness left her drowning in hospital bills. Her clothes were simple, her accent humble, but her eyes were full of something different. Compassion. Maria moved through the mansion carefully, always on time, always polite, never gossiping. But every evening, when her duties were done, she would look at Sophia, the silent little girl who sat by the window, tracing patterns on the fogged glass, and something in her heart would ache. You see, Maria had once had a little sister named Camila. Camila had lost her hearing after a strange fever when they were children. Their family was too poor for treatment, and Maria had watched helplessly as her sister faded, unable to hear her, unable to say goodbye. That pain had never left her. And from that day, she had made herself a quiet promise. If she ever met another child like Camila, she would not look away. The first time Maria tried to reach Sophia, the girl didn't even look up. She was sitting on the staircase, lining up her toy animals in a perfect row. Maria placed a small folded paper bird beside her and walked away. The next morning, the bird was gone. A few days later, Maria found another paper bird waiting on her cleaning cart, folded clumsily, but carefully, with a tiny smile drawn on one wing. That's when she knew. The girl might not hear, but she could feel love. From that day, something small began to change in the Vallon mansion. When Maria passed Sophia in the corridor, she would smile and sign good morning. At first, Sophia only blinked. Then, slowly, she began to sign back. Maria learned new signs every night by watching videos on her old cracked phone. She practiced by whispering each word aloud, even though Sophia couldn't hear, because Maria believed that somehow, kindness always found a way to be heard. Soon, Sophia began following Maria to the garden while she worked. She would sit nearby, sketching quietly while Maria watered the roses. Sometimes Maria would hum, not to be heard, but to keep herself company, and though Sophia couldn't hear the tune, she smiled as though she could feel it. For the first time in years, the mansion had a different kind of silence, not cold, but gentle. Not lonely, but alive. But not everyone saw it that way. One evening, as Maria cleaned the grand dining room, the butler leaned close and whispered sharply, "Stay away from the girl. Mr. Vallon doesn't like the staff getting too close." Maria froze. "But sir, she seems happier." "That's not your concern," he hissed. "You're paid to clean, not to care." Maria said nothing, but inside, her heart burned, because she knew what loneliness looked like, and she saw it every time she looked into Sophia's eyes. It started with a flinch. Then came the winces. Soon, Sophia began touching her right ear more often, pressing it, frowning, grimacing in pain. One afternoon, Maria knelt beside her, signing, "Are you hurt?" Sophia pointed to her ear again and mouthed one word, "Pain." Maria tilted the girl's head gently, letting sunlight fall across her ear. What she saw made her heart skip. Deep inside, something tiny glistened. Something dark. Something moving. Her first thought was that it must be a trick of light. But the next day, Sophia's pain worsened. She began crying quietly, refusing to eat. Maria went to the butler. He dismissed her. She begged for the doctor to be called. The butler waved her away. "Mr. Vallon doesn't take orders from maids." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She sat by the kitchen window, whispering to the stars, "Lord, please, don't let me fail this child like I failed my sister." The house was asleep. Moonlight poured softly through the long corridor windows, painting the marble floors in silver. The clock in the hallway ticked gently, the only sound in a mansion that had always feared noise. But down the servants' wing, Maria sat awake. Her hand shook around a cup of untouched tea. She couldn't shake Sophia's face from her mind, the way the girl had pressed her ear, the tears streaming silently down her cheeks, the way she had mouthed help. Maria whispered into the night, "Lord, I don't know what to do. But you do. Please, guide me." She rose quietly, her bare feet cold against the stone floor, and began walking toward the child's room. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. When she pushed the door open, she froze. Sophia was sitting upright in bed, her little hands pressed to her ear, her face pale with pain. Tears glistened on her cheeks. Maria rushed to her side. She knelt and signed softly, "Does it hurt again?" Sophia nodded desperately, trembling. Maria felt a lump rise in her throat. She brushed the child's hair back and tilted her head gently. Under the faint glow of the night lamp, she saw it again, deep inside the ear, something small, dark, and alive. This time, there was no mistaking it. It moved. Maria's breath caught. Every instinct told her to call for help, but she remembered what the butler said, remembered the doors that had slammed in her face. She knew no one would come. Her heart pounded. "Please forgive me if I'm wrong," she whispered. "But I can't do nothing." She pulled from her apron pocket a small silver pin, the same one she used to fix torn uniforms. Her hands trembled violently as she knelt before the child. Sophia looked frightened but didn't move away. She trusted Maria more than anyone else in that house. "Hold still, sweetheart," Maria said softly. "I promise, I'll be gentle." The room was so quiet that Maria could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She steadied her breath, then leaned close, letting the faint light guide her hand. The pin touched something soft, then sticky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, something slid free. Something black, wet, and moving. It fell into Maria's palm. Her heart almost stopped. It was a small, worm-like creature, squirming faintly, coated in dark fluid. She stared in horror and wonder. What on earth? Then she heard it. A sound. Not from the creature. From Sophia. The girl gasped, her body tensing. Her eyes went wide, her lips trembling as she looked around the room. She touched her ear, then her throat. And then, she whispered, barely audible. Maria. Maria froze. The world seemed to stop moving. Tears filled her eyes. What did you just say? Sophia blinked, confused. I can hear. Maria covered her mouth, shaking. Oh my God, you can hear me. Sophia began crying, but this time, the tears were different. They were alive. She laughed and sobbed at once, covering her ears, overwhelmed by the sound of the ticking clock, the wind brushing against the window, Maria's own gasping breaths. Maria hugged her tightly, whispering through her tears. It's okay, baby. It's okay. That sound. You're hearing it for the first time. Sophia smiled through her tears, whispering again. It's beautiful. Maria wept harder. She didn't notice the door slowly creaking open behind her. A shadow fell across the room. Standing there, frozen in disbelief, was the butler, his face pale, his eyes wide. What on earth is going on here? He whispered. Maria turned, startled. Please, sir, don't shout. But he was already backing away, horrified. She's done something to the child, he cried, running down the hall. Mr. Vallon. Come quickly. Sophia flinched at the loud voice, covering her ears. Maria held her close, whispering, It's okay. Don't be scared. You're safe. Moments later, heavy footsteps thundered toward them. The door burst open. Adrien Vallon stood in the doorway, his face drained of color. What is happening here? Maria tried to speak, but her voice shook. Sir, please, she can hear. He cut her off sharply. You touched her again. Sir, she was in pain. I saw something inside. Adrien's voice rose like thunder. Enough. Guards. Two men stormed in and grabbed Maria by the arms. Sophia screamed, No. Her first loud word, but the shock of it went unnoticed. Adrien stood frozen. For a moment, he thought he'd imagined it, that faint, desperate cry. Dad! He turned slowly. His daughter was crying, clutching her ears, trembling, but speaking. Dad, she said again, voice shaking. Adrien's breath caught. His knees almost gave out. For 10 years, he had dreamed of that single word. Maria's voice broke through his trance, pleading, Please, sir. Listen. She can hear now. I don't know how, but she can. But the guards held her tighter. Adrien's face hardened, confusion clouded by anger. You could have killed her, he barked. Take her away. Daddy. Sophia cried, trying to reach him. Maria was dragged out of the room, tears streaming down her face as Sophia screamed her name. The last thing Maria saw before the door slammed shut was the little girl's trembling hands signing one word. Why? The mansion that had once been silent was now filled with chaos. Voices shouted. Footsteps thundered. Doors slammed. Maria was dragged down the long, glittering hallway, her wrists bound by the guards' rough hands. The same marble floor she had polished every day now echoed with her sobs. Behind her, she could still hear Sophia screaming her name. Maria. Maria. Every cry cut deeper than the last. But the men pulling her forward didn't stop. They hauled her into the grand foyer where Adrien Vallon waited, towering, furious, broken. His usually calm face was now carved with rage and fear. Put her down, he ordered coldly. Maria fell to her knees, shaking. Sir, please, listen to me. He cut her off. You touched my daughter again after I warned you. You're not a doctor. His voice thundered through the hall. Do you have any idea what you could have done? You could have killed her. Maria's voice cracked. Please, she spoke. She can hear now. Ask her, she said your name. The butler stepped forward quickly. Sir, she's lying. I saw it. The girl was on the floor, and that woman was holding something black. Adrien's eyes narrowed. What did you do to her, Maria? Maria's tears spilled over. I pulled it out, sir. It was inside her. It was alive. I don't know what it was, but it was hurting her. And when I removed it, she could hear. Adrien's face twisted with disbelief. Do you even hear yourself? Some maid performs a miracle where the world's best doctors failed. He turned away, his voice trembling with anger. Enough. I won't hear another word. Guards, call the police. I want her held until we know exactly what she's done to my child. Maria gasped. Sir, no, please. I didn't hurt her, I saved her. But her words fell like dust. The guards seized her arms again. Take her away. Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot in her white nightgown, tears streaking her face. Daddy, stop, she shouted. Her small voice shook the air, but to Adrien, it sounded impossible. He turned, frozen. Her lips moved again. She helped me. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. The butler stared. The guards hesitated. But Adrien's mind refused to accept what he heard. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to erase the sound. No, no, that's not possible. Sophia tried to speak again, but her voice broke into sobs. Maria cried out, Please, sir, look at her. She's speaking. Listen to your own daughter. But Adrien's fear had already hardened into denial. Enough, he roared. Take her out of my house. Sophia screamed, No. It was the loudest sound that Mansion had ever heard. And yet, no one listened. The guards dragged Maria toward the service exit as she wept, calling out one last time, I swear to you, Mr. Vallon, I only wanted to help her. The doors slammed shut. Silence returned. But it was no longer the peaceful kind. It was heavy, suffocating, poisoned by regret. Later that night, Maria sat alone in the security room, her wrists tied, her eyes swollen from crying. The guards stood by the door, their expressions blank. She could still hear faint crying from somewhere down the hall, Sophia's voice, calling her name again and again. Maria closed her eyes and whispered through her tears, God, please, let them see the truth. Please don't let this be the end. Meanwhile, upstairs, Adrien sat in his study, his hands trembling around a half-empty glass of whiskey. He stared at the family photo on his desk, Sophia as a baby, smiling in her mother's arms, back when the world still made sense. He could still hear that voice in his head, Dad. It had sounded real. Too real. He pressed his palms to his temples, whispering, It can't be. It's impossible. She's never spoken a day in her life. But deep inside, beneath the layers of pride and fear, something fragile stirred, a father's doubt. Could it be true? He wanted to believe it. But his mind, trained to trust science and control, refused. Then came a knock at the door. It was the butler, pale and hesitant. Sir, the ambulance is here. The doctors are waiting for Miss Sophia. Adrien stood silently for a long moment, staring at the floor. Then he straightened his suit and whispered to himself, If she really spoke, the doctors will tell me. They'll explain everything. And with that, he walked out, leaving the empty glass behind, along with the faint echo of the word that had shaken his world. Dad. The night had barely lifted when flashing red and blue lights painted the marble walls of the Vallon estate. An ambulance waited by the grand staircase as paramedics carried Sophia gently down the steps. Adrien walked beside the stretcher in silence. He didn't speak. He didn't dare. Sophia kept trying to say something, her small fingers trembling as she reached for him. Dad. Please. Maria. Her words came broken but real, and each one cut him open like a blade of truth. But Adrien couldn't look at her. He couldn't even look at himself. At the hospital, the corridors smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped softly behind glass walls. Sophia lay in a room filled with light and silence, doctors moving quickly around her. Adrien stood outside the observation window, his hands buried in his pockets, his heart heavier than it had ever been. He had faced boardrooms, governments, crises, but never this kind of helplessness. When the door opened, a man in a white coat stepped out, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Vallon," the doctor said carefully, "your daughter's hearing appears to be restored." Adrien blinked, not understanding. "Restored?" he repeated. That's impossible." The doctor hesitated. "We thought so too. But the tests don't lie. She's responding to sound, clearly, consistently. Whatever happened to her tonight changed everything." Adrien's voice dropped. "Changed how?" The doctor adjusted his glasses. "We found something unusual in her right ear. A biological mass, something alive, possibly parasitic. It had fused deep into her auditory canal, likely since birth. It blocked her hearing completely." Adrien's eyes widened. "You're saying all these years, she was deaf because of that?" "Yes. And what's more troubling," the doctor lowered his voice, "it should have been detected long ago. Any proper scan would have found it. But the medical reports we reviewed from your previous hospitals—" He stopped, glancing at the clipboard. Adrien frowned. "What about them?" The doctor exhaled. "They were altered. Some of them even forged." Adrien's breath caught. "Forged?" The doctor handed him a file. "You should see this." Adrien opened it. His eyes raced down the printed lines, reports stamped with logos of prestigious hospitals, signed by specialists he'd trusted for years. And then he saw the note at the bottom of one page, a single line that made his blood run cold. "Maintain diagnosis for continued funding. Vallon account remains active." For a moment, Adrien couldn't breathe. His vision blurred. He read it again, slower, hoping he was wrong. But the words didn't change. He whispered, They lied. They kept her deaf, for money." The doctor looked away, ashamed. "It appears so. I'm sorry, Mr. Vallon. There's evidence that your daughter's condition was deliberately misrepresented. She was never treated. The parasite was never even checked for." Adrien's hands began to shake. He slammed the folder shut, his voice breaking. "You monsters." He staggered back, staring through the glass at his daughter, the little girl he had carried across the world searching for cures, the little girl he'd blamed fate for, the one he'd let suffer in silence while others profited from her pain. And then, like lightning, it hit him, the face of the maid he had thrown out in shame. The woman who had seen what none of them did. The one he had silenced. Maria. He turned sharply to the nurse at the desk. "Where is the woman who was brought here with us, the maid?" "She's still in the holding room, sir. Security's waiting for your order." Adrien's voice cracked. "Release her. Now." Minutes later, the door to the holding room creaked open. Maria sat on a bench, her wrists still marked from the guard's grip. Her eyes were red, her shoulders trembling from hours of silent crying. When she looked up and saw Adrien standing there, she froze. He took one hesitant step forward. For the first time, his voice wasn't cold. It was broken. "Maria, I was wrong." Her lips parted, but no words came. Adrien lowered his gaze. "You didn't hurt my daughter. You saved her." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. "She can hear." He nodded slowly, unable to stop his own tears. "Yes, she can hear." The doctors found something inside her ear, something none of them ever saw. "You were right." Maria covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Adrien continued, his voice trembling. "They lied to me for years. They made me believe she was incurable, just to keep taking my money. But you saw what all of them missed." Maria shook her head. "I didn't do it for thanks, sir. I just couldn't let her suffer." Adrien looked at her, really looked, for the first time since she entered his home. And for the first time in his life, the billionaire felt small. He whispered, "I owe you an apology, and more than that, my respect." Moments later, Adrien and Maria stepped into Sophia's room together. The little girl turned her head at the sound of their footsteps, and smiled through her tears. "Maria," she said softly, her voice still shaky but full of joy. Maria gasped, pressing her hand to her chest. "Oh, sweetheart, you can still speak." Sophia nodded, beaming. "You helped me." Adrien stood silently by the bed, his heart breaking and healing all at once. He looked at Maria, then at his daughter, and said quietly, "All the doctors I paid, all the power I chased, and yet it took a maid's heart to give my child a voice." Maria lowered her eyes humbly. "Sometimes, sir, it's not the world that's deaf. It's our hearts." Adrien nodded slowly, eyes glistening. In that single moment, standing beside the woman he had once accused and the daughter who could finally hear, he understood what money could never buy. Morning light spilled gently through the hospital windows, turning the white walls golden. For the first time in 10 years, the Vallon family could hear the sound of laughter, Sophia's laughter, light and musical, filling the sterile halls with life. Adrien stood by the window, watching her play with Maria. The little girl giggled each time the paper birds fluttered from Maria's hands, landing softly on her lap. Every sound made Adrien's chest tighten, not with pain, but gratitude. It was the kind of joy that money couldn't purchase, the kind that humbled a man who once thought he could control the world. Later that day, cameras filled the hospital conference room. The world's media had come, drawn by the shocking headlines about the billionaire whose deaf daughter had suddenly been healed by Maid. Adrien stepped up to the podium. His voice, calm and steady, echoed through the room. "For years, I was told my daughter would never hear. I paid for the best doctors, the best hospitals, the best promises money could buy. But it wasn't medicine that restored her hearing. It was compassion." He paused, emotion tightening his throat. The woman who sits behind me, Maria Alvarez, saw what no expert did. She listened when no one else cared to. And tonight, I want the world to know that the true miracle wasn't that my daughter can hear. It's that I finally can. Gasps and soft applause filled the room. Cameras flashed as Adrien continued, holding up the folder of falsified medical reports. "What we discovered is unforgivable. My child's pain was turned into profit. That ends today. I am establishing the Sophia Foundation, a free global program for children with hearing loss, no matter where they come from or what they can pay. And the first person I'm entrusting to lead it is Maria." Every head turned toward her. Maria's hand flew to her chest, eyes wide, tears shining. She shook her head humbly. "Sir, you don't owe me." Adrien interrupted softly. "I owe you everything." The room erupted in applause. But for Maria, the loudest sound in the world was Sophia's tiny voice behind her, whispering, "You're my hero." Days later, the Vallon mansion looked the same, but it felt different. Gone was the heavy silence. Gone was the fear of sound. Music drifted softly from the open windows. Laughter echoed down the hallways. Sophia ran through the corridors calling, "Maria, Daddy." And those words, once impossible, now felt like treasures scattered through the air. In the evenings, they gathered in the garden. Adrien read reports for the new foundation while Maria taught Sophia new words. Sometimes the child would laugh and mimic birdsongs, amazed by the world she had never heard before. Adrien would look up from his papers, watch them together, and smile, a quiet, contented smile of a man who finally understood the value of stillness. One night, when the moon hung high and the house was calm, Adrien stood by the tall window of his study. He looked out over the garden where water from the fountain shimmered like silver. The sound of it, soft, rhythmic, alive, filled him with peace. He heard footsteps behind him. Maria stood at the doorway, a gentle smile on her face. "You're still awake," she said softly. He nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" Adrien turned toward her, eyes warm. about how sometimes the smallest voice can change everything. Maria smiled faintly. That's true. They stood together for a while, saying nothing, but the silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of meaning, full of gratitude, full of love. Finally, Adrien spoke again, his voice low and sincere. Thank you, Maria. You didn't just give my daughter her hearing back. You gave me mine. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Sometimes, she whispered, we all just need someone to listen. He nodded slowly, the fountain's soft trickle echoing through the quiet. For the first time in years, the Vallon mansion wasn't a house of silence. It was a home filled with the sound of love. Dear viewers, sometimes silence doesn't live in our ears, it lives in our hearts. We chase success, we chase control, we chase noise, and in doing so, we stop hearing what truly matters. Maria didn't heal Sophia with science or money. She did it with kindness, courage, and faith. She didn't just make a child hear. She taught a father how to listen. And that, dear friends, is the greatest miracle of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And remember, somewhere in the world, someone like Maria still exists. Someone who listens when the world stays silent.